Welcome in, Slumpbusters. It is your host, Juju Talk Sports, and of course by my co-host, Kyle Ledbetter. You may have heard, but the Cleveland Browns have been making significant noise this offseason. This comes after a 2021 season where the Browns were picked as a preseason Super Bowl contender by even some mainstream pundits. Perhaps our first big trade of the year came when the Browns acquired Amari Cooper from the Dallas Cowboys, but that seems like peanuts after Deshaun Watson waived his no-trade clause to move to the land. Of course, Deshaun's arrival means former first-round pick Baker Mayfield is set for a departure. Joining us to discuss all things Cleveland, Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Jeff, think you've had enough time to process kind of the March Madness version of the Cleveland Browns?
It's been crazy. Obviously the Amari Cooper move to start things off and basically getting themselves a player that they felt was going to be unattainable if it got to the point where he was released and he was a free agent. And then you get to basically the courtship, basically, trying to jump in the DMs, so to speak, of Deshaun Watson, trying to get his attention and then getting a meeting with him and making it sounding like it didn't go very well. Then when he narrowed his list down to 4, when he narrowed it down to 3, the Browns were the first team out. Browns went to work and said, you know what, we're going to keep chiseling at this. If we can make this a monetary thing that maybe he can't refuse, we're certainly going to give our attempt to do that. And I think they got themselves to that point where it was, as far as a contract, and Deshaun Watson's people are saying that other teams offered about the same type of guaranteed money. I think I can believe that. But if we're talking if it's the Atlanta Falcons or the New Orleans Saints, you take Baker Mayfield out of the equation for the Cleveland Browns and you insert Deshaun Watson into the equation, do the Browns become then the most, nicest looking option of the 3? I have to say yes. And I think when they sat down and realized that the money was too good to pass up and they physically looked and opened their eyes a little bit more to the situation with the Cleveland Browns, they said, you want to know what? This probably is the best destination of the ones that, we think we want to go to.
You mentioned it. It whittled down to 3. There was just New Orleans, there was Atlanta, there was the Cleveland Browns. So when we recorded our podcast last week, I wasn't even thinking about the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns were the furthest thing on my radar. What was your instant reaction when that trade went through?
Honestly, was like, how? Because this is, you get told no something 3 times in a row. Most people are usually done. Usually that's enough for you. Okay, no, all right, we've been told no 3 different times. This is over. But, I think the Browns, they went to their ownership, and I think they went to, how far are you willing to go monetarily? Because we think we're still in this, even though nobody in the national media believes that we are, which was the case, because I don't think anybody really had this. They had that the Browns had interest. But once you get told no, and you hear this from all the major outlets, you just assume it's over with. But I'm assuming they got ownership to say, hey, you need to go as far as you need to go. We'll guarantee the money. If you guys are telling us this is the right move, we're okay with it. We'll okay it. And I think that's where it got to. And then once it came to the point where, Watson's camp realized that they were going to, not just get out of Houston, but we're going to greatly benefit financially. I think that was it. And that's where it came to, fruition. About 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, basically the hammer dropped and Deshaun Watson had decided, he was going to waive his no trade clause. The Houston Texans were good with it, and Deshaun Watson's, headed to the Cleveland to be a Brown.
So trading for Deshaun Watson clearly carries a moral quandary for a lot of Browns fans. He is still facing a civil suit for 22 counts of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct. So how do you feel about the moral and ethical decision that Browns fans are having to make right now when, they didn't ask for this decision to come on and the franchise, still went ahead and traded for Deshaun Watson?
It's actually funny the way you're kind of phrasing this, because I literally just, got off of responding to a tweet a few minutes ago. And, it was basically from a fan who said, I think I'm done. And this is, I think somebody in his 60s. So, we're talking about, a 60-year relationship basically since the inception of the Cleveland Browns. And, my response was to him, I understand you're not the only one. And I hate that you were put into this situation. And my initial tweet when this all went down on Friday was, if you're excited, I get it. If you're indifferent to the whole thing, I get it. And if you're pissed, I get it. Browns fans, this is a lot of range of emotions right here. Yes, you understand, your team got better at the quarterback position. You got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL to agree to come play for your team. But there's a lot to it. Look, if these incidents hadn't gone on, Deshaun Watson probably would have never been available. Maybe he would have continued on in Houston. They would have been able to turn, things around in there, become, a much better franchise. But for fans, look, I truly understand. There's certain players in sports, and look, I understand that there's part of a fan base out there anywhere that says, you want to know what? The league doesn't care, team doesn't care. Why should I care? But there are a lot of people out there who, carry themselves, try to be as morally correct as they can. Me, I am a father. I have 2 daughters who are teenagers. This type of behavior is, for me, kind of unacceptable, but I'm paid to do this. This is a job. You don't get to choose the assignment you are given. You basically play the hand you are dealt. And my listeners know where I stand on things like this. I wasn't a huge fan of the Kareem Hunt move a few years ago. I think you can build a team and a competitive team and a great team without having going down the avenue of said players like this. But, that being said, for me, I'd like to know, the Browns said they did their due diligence, like when the teacher used to ask you to show your homework, I'd like to see the Browns show their homework. What in their due diligence made them feel more comfortable about doing this than, maybe most of America?
We're still waiting on a decision from the NFL regarding Deshaun's playing status for next year. Assuming Deshaun gets suspended, let's say 8 games. I'm comparing this to like Antonio Brown. I'm comparing this to like Ezekiel Elliott, what we know their suspensions ended up coming out to be. Does that mean the Browns still have an opportunity to compete for a championship in 2022? Because obviously 8 games of Jacoby Brissett is also factored into that equation.
Well, the key would be is, what you can do within those 8 games. Can you tread water? Can you go 4-4? That's a huge part of it. The other part of it is, when are these division games scheduled? 2 with Cincinnati, huge. 2 with Baltimore, huge. Not really sure where Pittsburgh's going to be just yet, but you can't rule out any team that's coached by Mike Tomlin. So part of that's also going to be the way the schedule falls. I mean, if, most of your division games are within, those last 9 regular season games, that's certainly beneficial to the Browns. As far as a length of suspension, I'm not really sure. Kareem Hunt, you mentioned a couple of things. Kareem Hunt, it was an 8-game suspension for him a few years ago when he began his Browns career. And that's another one that kind of has some Browns fans triggered, because you made this move. You obviously have a lot invested into this, and you have no idea when your quarterback is actually going to be available to play for you. So, another pill that's difficult to swallow as far as digesting this entire thing as a whole.
Well, you mentioned the Browns doing their due diligence around the situation, and obviously Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and Jimmy Haslam made their statements afterwards, which had some, lawyerism speak in it, and they talked about doing their investigative homework, and it looks like Watson's not going to have to answer for this, or at least the Browns are going to protect him from answering. So do you think that in that event that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have an obligation to speak more on this situation and speak more to the due diligence the Browns did?
Well, the first things first is, I don't know if Deshaun Watson can physically say anything right now. I mean, legally wise, what would your lawyer say? You can go to this press conference, but you know what I'm saying? I don't think there's anything Deshaun Watson can truly say here while you still have 22 pending lawsuits of this nature. So certainly that is difficult. You look for Andrew Berry. I mean, he's a father. Kevin Stefanski is a father. These guys are married. I mean, we would like to hear something from somebody, and not just that, we went through it, and apparently, some teams were involved with investigators to the situation. I would assume the Browns, who seem like a very, very intelligent, run organization right now, I'm assuming they went that route, but, fans are going to want to hear something. Media is going to want to hear something, because everything we know to this point, this situation does not look good, even though he's not going to get charges essentially pressed against him. And as anybody knows, you can kind of get a ham sandwich indicted at times. There's a lot of answers to be had here. And it's not like, enough of this fan base is blind to the fact that they got a better quarterback. They're going to ignore it. There's truly answers to be had. You guys said by doing your due diligence, you feel comfortable about it. So that means then you had information that we didn't. Then what is that information? You basically have to show your hold cards.
One thing I found fascinating about this trade was it was 6 draft picks. And now when Houston was first putting it out there, what they wanted back in a Deshaun Watson trade, they mentioned multiple first-round draft picks and 2 established guys that can help them right now. But again, they ended up settling just for draft picks. What do you think about the trade as a whole? Do you think the Browns managed to escape? They got the better of the Texans in that sense, not having to give up anyone that could help them in this coming year or next year?
That was key for this, because the Browns, important in looking in this was, basically what they told Baker Mayfield is, we think we want to go up another level as far as skill to quarterback. They had told him names like Aaron Rodgers, laughable, never coming. Told him names like Russell Wilson, he was never coming to Cleveland. For Deshaun Watson, the situation was different. He was not in a position where, yes, he held the cards, but not really as much, due to the fact that he was trying to essentially get back into the league, get back into a position to be playing again. For them, the defense, and it's one of the things that got overlooked in what was a bad year last year. The defense really, really grew, and they have a lot of young players on that defense, a lot of talented young players. They did not want to give up a player like Greg Newsome. They did not want to give up a player like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. What they felt is upgrade the quarterback position, but stay status quo. They were able to do it. I think maybe that's part of why this, the final draft pick got put in on Monday, which was the Browns were giving up their 4th round pick this year, pick 107. That hadn't been mentioned all weekend long by either team. But again, at that point, the Browns were so committed that wasn't going to hold anything up. But the Browns felt it was key to try to keep the roster intact and just upgrade the quarterback position.
Well, speaking of everything surrounding the Cleveland Browns, that's not this moral, conflicting, depressing situation. They did cut Jarvis Landry and cut JC Treader. They swapped backup quarterbacks, and then obviously you mentioned earlier, traded for Amari Cooper at the beginning of the free agency cycle. So what did you make of everything else that the Browns did around the obvious Deshaun Watson situation?
Well, I mean, when you make these 2 moves for Cooper and Watson, obviously you give up draft assets. Both of these players come in and take up, a lot of cap space. They were able to maneuver Cooper's contract to create cap space for themselves. But it takes you out of, draft all of a sudden, it was, obviously a lot of draft work. Now when you talk, their first pick is at 44, they were scheduled to have 9 picks. Now they have 9, but 5 of those picks are on day 3. So you really can't be counting on as much from them. You can get, if you get Jadeveon Clowney done and brought back here, you basically have your starting 22 on the roster with some good depth at some positions. It allows you maneuverability in the draft to just basically get some guys who are going to be fill-in pieces, maybe counted on later down the road. I think they've done a really, really solid point. If you take the Deshaun Watson off field out of the equation, I think they've done a really, really nice job. It's just a different way they did it this year. Obviously, they did it through 2 major trades, as opposed to the first 2 years. It was through free agency in the draft.
The last major chip to fall for the Browns this offseason, though, has to be what happens with Baker Mayfield. We're still trying to figure out, where does he go? What do we do with Baker Mayfield? Are the Browns overplaying their hands? I've heard reports that they're still seeking a higher round draft pick for Baker, where other teams, the positions are filling up. The starting jobs are filling up around the league. So at best, if I'm an NFL GM, I'm maybe offering a 4th, a 5th, a 6th round pick. I'm not offering anything good for the Browns. What do you think happens with Baker in terms of value? What value does he still have around the league?
Well, the Browns, there's no way I believe that once they went this route, and basically saying they wanted to put their eyes on, the elite of the elite quarterback position, they totally understood that it was going to put them in a difficult position as far as what to do with Baker. It certainly didn't help that, I think that, Jimmy Haslam told Chris Mortensen they wanted an adult in the room, and Chris Mortensen decided to tell the entire NFL landscape that. So that right there, you absolutely take a huge major knock on trying to move on from Baker Mayfield. All that being said, I don't think the Browns care. If they wanted Deshaun Watson this bad, they don't care about the situation they are in now. If it comes down to this is the pick, and okay, we have no choice. And it's part of the fact that, basically you're going to put this pick into it. And even though Baker Mayfield didn't go to Houston, you're going to view it that it was a trade that involved Baker Mayfield, and whatever pick comes back. If I'm them, I'm calling Seattle. I'm calling Carolina every single day. But keep in mind, Carolina, Seattle, these teams both hold a top 10 selection in this year's draft. Maybe there are quarterbacks that they have their eyes on. And the other problem is Baker Mayfield has 1 year of control. I know people want to say, oh, well, there's 2 years after this, because they can always, franchise tag them. If we can't get more than a day 3 pick for Baker Mayfield, nobody is going to pick up a franchise tag on Baker Mayfield. So it's a lot of issue with all of this with it. So, but for the Browns, look, whatever they can get, I don't think they're going to care at this point, even if it's going to look crazy that they traded a former number 1 overall pick for a day 3 pick, 5th, 6th, whatever it may be. It's just that he's got to go.
How do you think Baker Mayfield is going to be remembered in Cleveland?
This is where it gets really, really interesting, because there are so many people. And if you go back 1 calendar year ago, as far as Browns content, everybody was fine. You saw the season they had, won a playoff game in Pittsburgh, took Kansas City almost 60 minutes, before losing a tight one late, and said, okay, here comes free agency. Here comes the draft. And what was that? Basically, the Browns had a lot of expectations for the 2021 season. Everybody seemed to, as a whole, turned on Baker Mayfield. For me, I understand he did not play well, but there is a major injury involved. And I don't know how much that impacted him. Nobody knows how much that impacted him. And, basically somebody's going to get the finger pointed at him here. And it seems to be Baker Mayfield. But as you guys mentioned earlier, Odell Beckham Jr., no longer here. Jarvis Landry, no longer here. Austin Hooper, no longer here. They were supposed to be the top 3 targets for Baker Mayfield in 2020, in 2021. It didn't work out. They threw everybody out of the building, got rid of them all. So yes, you want to point a finger at Baker Mayfield. That's fine. But nobody won here. They moved on from all 4 of them. For me, I started covering the Browns with this podcast in 2017. Basically, most of the content was on Friday. We did a pregame show. The Browns are going to get their butts kicked this weekend. Here's why. Monday, we came back with the Browns got their butts kicked this weekend. Here's why. We did 3 days of draft coverage, and then we went right back into pregame and postgame shows. But now, I mean, for where he got this team, 2018, where the team actually had respectability, a lot of expectations in 2019. Obviously, that didn't pan out. The ride that was 2020, and a lot of Browns fans, the expectations is Super Bowls, and I get that. The expectations is Super Bowls for a lot of cities. For the Browns, you basically start by climbing the ladder one ring at a time and getting basically to the playoffs. Was that wrong? So everybody, I tease like maybe everybody kind of went from, basically having, beer, basically a beer taste to a champagne taste. It's not fair that Baker Mayfield is going out of the city like he is. A lot of the shots he is taking, it's not fair. He did a lot for this city, a lot for this franchise. This was a guy that showed up to anything you asked him for charity wise. There was a time last year in 2020, there was a Browns fan who was severely ill, dying from cancer. One of his last wishes was go to a Browns home game for the last time with his friends. Not only did they sat in Baker Mayfield's box, they sat with Baker's wife. Baker and his wife drove him home after the game. For me, the way it's going down like this and the way he's going out, it doesn't sit right for me for all the accomplishments that he did do for his time in the city.
Seems like a lot of adult decisions there by Baker Mayfield. But Jeff Lloyd, thank you for coming on, man. Obviously, the Browns are going to be a huge story this year in the NFL. Amari, Deshaun, all the moves that we talked about on this podcast, and Baker Mayfield still to come. Locked On Podcast Network. Jeff, is there any other places we could find your work?
Where we are with Locked On now and the state of things from where we started to where we are, there's really not time for much else for any of us. I mean, we've been, it's just been a great job, obviously by our owner and the team underneath him, doing the work for us, and obviously, promoting our work, getting others to believe in our work. And it's just been a hell of a ride for me. I mean, come September, this will be 5 years with Locked On. This is going into my 6th year of coverage of the Browns. It's just been the wildest of rides. And I just enjoy every second of it. And basically what I tell everybody is, basically, be able to, make any money doing something that you're just truly passionate about. It makes, the rest of your life just go very, very easily.
I think that's the dream for all of us. Well, again, thank you for coming on, guys. Go ahead and check Jeff Lloyd out. Check out all the Locked On content, all the Locked On Browns content at Slumpbuster Podcast for us. Juju Talk Sports, Kyle Ledbetter. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. And we will see you next time.